Hey Tyler, how's it going?
Hey, Amir. Going great. How are you?
Pretty good, can't complain. Freezing in New York.
Yeah. On that note, I was flying home for Christmas last week to visit the family. I had a really strange experience. I had a bad customer service experience with an airline, and they wanted to make it right. So I get this email the next day from them asking me for a whole bunch of personal information, which given especially what we do for a living, made me immediately suspicious. So I run all the usual checks. I look it up. It looks like the right domain. It looks legitimate. I wound up calling them. Turns out it was a totally legitimate email, unsolicited from the airline that was actually just asking me for personal information, which I think is bonkers.
I was just gonna say that's crazy because I saw the email and it's like um, somebody should just like curate a collection of real emails that look like phishing and like share that on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, it triggered every flag we tell people to look out for, right? It's a real company I've done business with, but it's not that hard to tell I've done business. They're asking me for information they should know, and it's information that absolutely can be used for other purposes. I mean, it checked every box other than getting caught in my spam filter, right? It was crazy that a real person sent this.
And actually, like
Uh,
airline miles and rewards programs are one of the easiest things to like steal and sell on the dark web.
Yeah, that's a great point too. So a lot of reasons to be suspicious, right? But no, it turns out it was totally legitimate. They actually were trying to make it right, just in the worst way possible. And then I got to thinking, if I'm getting this email that looks fake but is real, how do we expect our users or our employees to have any hope of identifying real phishing when they follow the things we tell them and they're going to be flagging real stuff as fake? And then let's be honest, a lot of the scammers out there are better at writing legitimate looking emails than the customer service people at this airline, apparently. It just puts people in a helpless position when all we give them is training for their personal lives.
Okay, so that's what prompted you to write this article about anti-phishing strategies.
Yeah, so the article I wrote is talking a little bit about this category of, I call it personal phishing, right? So this is when business-related phishing winds up in people's personal inboxes. And, I talk to a lot of CISOs, and most of them are doing various things to protect their employees from business phishing to their business accounts, right? Whether it's filtering on the server level, phishing training, mailboxes, a whole bunch of usual solutions, right? But it's only very few of them that are doing things to protect people from these same things in their personal lives. And there are two things I call out as being really flawed about this and why it then comes back to the business phishing, anti-phishing not working. The first is the way we handle email is just such a habitual thing, right? The reality is, I have obviously separate mailboxes for work and for my personal life, but my process of going through email is such a habit. Which means that if I have certain habits that I develop at my home life, such as how I deal with emails that might be malicious, realistically, I'm going to take those same habits to work. And so if we're not training our employees to approach phishing holistically in their personal lives and their work lives, how are they going to know? And ultimately, you might or might not remember your phishing training, but you're probably not going to do a good job unless it's holistic. So that's the first piece, right? Is the habits we build. We're getting these emails personally. We need the same habits in our personal lives and in our work lives. And the other point I made is that people are getting emails to their personal addresses. This one was legitimate, but I think we've all gotten emails. I get emails all the time pretending to be you to my personal address, and no amount of business email filtering is going to catch that. But comes back to where we need to provide our employees with the same kind of security in their personal lives for their personal accounts that we provide them in their work lives. Because at work, I count on software to help me do a good job of catching phishing. But in my personal life, I'm used to that, and there's no protection there. So those are really the two things I recommended. It comes back to this idea that employees' personal lives are one of the biggest threat surfaces we face. And you look back over the last year, I know you talk about some of them, but there have been major cyber incidents that occurred because employees got emails to their personal accounts totally outside the corporate envelope.
So that's super interesting. I'm curious, like you talked about like training. Do you think that like training could actually be effective in this case? Like how could somebody measure if like, security training is actually effective? Because like I'm a little bit dubious. It might be a very shocking thing to say as a cybersecurity person, but like I'm not entirely convinced that security awareness training like does all that much.
I think it's a necessary part of a program. Like the reality is, part of why I ran all the checks I did on the legitimate email is because it's part of my habit, and it's something I've been, effectively trained to do. So I think it's part of the program. At the end of the day, though, it can only do so much, because the training is exactly what caused me to flag a legitimate email as spam, or as possible phishing. And we've also both seen the opposite, right? Where, our clients forward us emails that they want checked, and it takes the automated software, it takes more than training to identify something as phishing, because it passes all the things we train people to look for, right? It's not asking for information. All the domains look
100%.
legitimate. No amount of training is going to cover that. So I view it as a necessary part of the process. I mean, in the same way we tell our friends and family to lock their door when they leave the house, but
Right.
by itself, it's not sufficient. As far as how you measure the result, I think that's a tough one, because a lot of this, especially the automated phishing testing, right? The things people use to measure this, it kind of feels like a punishment. Nobody wants to be the guy who clicked on the anti-phishing link and has to send the whole department to phishing training. And so people are very careful in a really narrow band, but almost in a bad way. I think it kind of gamifies email at work, right? It teaches you to beat the phishing training. I don't know how much it really teaches you to beat actual phishing as it exists in the real world.
Yeah, totally. And I think the most important point there was that, so it helps you identify something suspicious, but then what? Like, then there actually has to be somebody to talk to. There has to be somebody you can send this to, who can verify its authenticity or follow up on whatever else needs to happen in the organization or in your personal life. So yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing. I think it's been like the consensus.
It's a great point. Or even here, we say my training caused me to think that this email from the airline was suspicious. But at the end of the day, it was the next steps. It was talking to an expert. It was running the software through diagnostics that confirmed it wasn't. And conversely, if it had been, it also would have been that step that identified that. And that all that is beyond training. None of that would we expect, an employer in our customer success team, an employee in our customer success team to be able to do by themselves, right?
I mean, totally. And like, you, with all of your experience, had me give you a second opinion. Like, you sent it to me. You're like, "It's authentic." Yeah. So,
yeah.
I can imagine what other people are going through.
They did a good job of making it look suspicious, right? So,
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, well, check out the article about anti-phishing strategies.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Amir. Good talking to you.
Okay, thanks.